There is a quiet shift that happens inside the human body, long before any symptoms appear. It does not announce itself with pain. It does not show up on standard medical tests. It simply begins, gradually, imperceptibly, changing how the body responds to the world around it. Most people mistake this shift for aging itself. They assume that slower recovery, afternoon fatigue, stiff joints in the morning, the sense that things just do not work as well as they once did. They assume this is simply what getting older feels like. And so they accept it. They adjust. They lower their expectations. But here is what is not often explained. Much of what we call aging is not the passage of time at work. It is something else entirely. It is a response to conditions. It is the body adapting to a load it was never designed to carry continuously. The body has within it systems designed for exactly this situation. Systems that calm, that repair, that restore. But those systems can only function when they are given the right conditions. And most of us, without realizing it, have been creating conditions that keep those systems switched off. What you are about to hear is not about reversing age or stopping time. It is about something far more practical. Understanding what the body actually needs to do what it already knows how to do. Because the capacity for repair, for recovery, for resilience, it does not disappear with age. It simply waits for the right circumstances to express itself. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. Living well across the years. A calm exploration of health and longevity. There comes a point in life when the questions begin to shift. Instead of asking, how can I accomplish more? We start asking, how can I continue to feel this good? Instead of wondering about the next milestone. We wonder about the years ahead and what it will take to move through them with ease, dignity, and vitality. These are not new questions. Humans have been asking them for thousands of years. What has changed is our understanding of what actually makes a difference. Not the quick fixes or the miracle cures that come and go with each passing decade, but the underlying patterns that consistently appear in the lives of those who age well. This is an exploration of those patterns, not a list of rules to follow or a prescription to obey, but an invitation to consider how the body works, why it changes over time, and what the evidence suggests about supporting it well. The body's balancing act. To understand how to support health over many decades, it helps to first understand what health actually looks like at the cellular level. The body is engaged in a continuous process of maintenance and repair. Cells are constantly being broken down and rebuilt. Tissues are regularly being refreshed. Old components are cleared away, and new ones take their place. This process requires balance. The systems that break things down and the systems that build them up must work in coordination. When they do, the body maintains itself effectively. When they fall out of balance, problems begin to accumulate. Consider what happens when you spend time in the sun. A small amount of ultraviolet light triggers the production of vitamin D, which supports numerous functions throughout the body. Too much ultraviolet light, however, damages the skin cells, and the body must repair that damage. A little stress of the right kind stimulates beneficial adaptation. Too much stress, or stress that continues without relief, overwhelms the repair systems. This is the fundamental principle that runs through everything we might call healthy aging. The body needs certain kinds of challenges to remain strong, but it also needs recovery. It needs to be used, but it also needs to be rested. It needs to be exposed to the world, but it also needs to be protected from excess. The question is not whether we will encounter stress. That is inevitable. The question is whether the body has what it needs to recover from it. The many faces of internal stress. When most people think of stress, they think of life events, deadlines, conflicts, financial worries. These certainly matter. But the body also responds to internal forms of stress that have nothing to do with what is happening in our lives externally. One of the most common internal stressors, particularly as people age, comes from what we eat, not from the food itself in a moral sense, but from how the body responds to certain types of foods. When we consume foods that break down quickly into sugar, the blood sugar level rises. This triggers the release of insulin, which helps move that sugar into cells where it can be used for energy. This system worked well for most of human history, when sugar was rare and physical activity was constant. But in the modern context, where sugar and refined carbohydrates are abundant and movement is optional, this same system can become a source of chronic internal stress. When blood sugar rises frequently throughout the day, insulin is released frequently. Cells are constantly being asked to take in more fuel. Over time, they become less responsive to insulin's signal. The pancreas responds by producing even more insulin. This elevated insulin level becomes a stressor itself, affecting numerous systems throughout the body. The delicate inner lining of blood vessels is particularly vulnerable. These cells are exposed directly to whatever circulates in the bloodstream. When blood sugar is high, it damages this lining. The body responds with inflammation, attempting to repair the damage. If this happens occasionally, the repair is successful. If it happens constantly, the repair process becomes chronic, and the blood vessels begin to change in ways that affect their function. This is not a matter of disease appearing suddenly. It is a matter of gradual change over years and decades. The body adapts to the conditions it is given. When those conditions include constant demands on the blood sugar regulation system, the body adapts in ways that eventually create problems. The same principle applies to other internal stressors. When fat cells accumulate, particularly around the abdomen, they become active participants in the body's signaling systems. They release compounds that promote inflammation throughout the body. This low-grade inflammation affects how cells respond to insulin, how tissues repair themselves, and how the immune system functions. When old injuries never fully resolve, they become sources of persistent local inflammation. The area may not hurt constantly, but the inflammatory processes continue at a low level, affecting surrounding tissues and contributing to the body's overall burden. When infections linger in the body, whether active or dormant, they constantly engage the immune system. The immune response itself creates inflammation. Even when the infection is controlled, the ongoing immune activity adds to the body's workload. None of these factors exist in isolation. They interact and amplify one another. Inflammation from one source makes the body more vulnerable to stressors from other sources. The system becomes overloaded not because of any single factor, but because of the cumulative weight of many factors operating together. The body's natural calming system. The body has its own built-in mechanism for calming inflammation and promoting recovery. This system centers on a hormone produced by the adrenal glands, which sits at the intersection of many of the body's regulatory pathways. This hormone follows a natural daily rhythm. It rises in the morning, helping us wake and become active. It falls throughout the day, reaching its lowest point at night when we sleep. This rhythm is essential for normal function. When it is disrupted, everything else is affected. The system is designed for short-term stress responses. When you face a genuine threat, this hormone surges, temporarily suppressing non-essential functions like digestion and reproduction while directing energy toward dealing with the immediate challenge. Once the threat passes, levels return to normal and the body resumes its usual activities. Problems arise when the stress response never fully turns off. When challenges are constant rather than intermittent, the hormone remains elevated. The body adapts to this by becoming less sensitive to its signal. The hormone is present, but cells no longer respond to it effectively. This is similar to what happens with insulin resistance. The body produces plenty of the hormone, but it stops working properly. The result is that the calming, anti-inflammatory effects of this system are lost, even while the hormone itself remains high. This helps explain why some people can have all the external signs of stress, the tension, the poor sleep, the difficulty relaxing, while also having inflammation that won't resolve. The system that should calm things down has become ineffective. Supporting this system means working with its natural rhythm. It means creating conditions that allow it to rise when it should and fall when it should. Bright light in the morning helps establish the daily rhythm. Regular activity during the day provides appropriate stimulation. Darkness at night allows the natural decline. Predictable patterns of rest and activity reinforce the body's internal timing. It also means reducing the constant low-grade stressors that keep the system activated. This includes the internal stressors from diet, from excess weight, from unresolved inflammation. When the body is not constantly dealing with these challenges, the natural calming system can function as it should. The question of food sensitivities. One of the more subtle sources of internal stress involves how the body reacts to specific foods. These reactions are not always obvious. They do not always cause immediate symptoms that are easy to connect to what was eaten. But they can create a persistent inflammatory load that affects health over time. The immune system is designed to distinguish between friend and foe. It learns early in life what belongs in the body and what does not. Sometimes this learning is imperfect. Sometimes the system becomes reactive to substances that are not actually harmful. When this happens with food, every exposure to that food triggers an immune response. This response includes inflammation. If the food is eaten regularly, the inflammation becomes chronic. The digestive tract, where this interaction occurs, becomes a constant source of inflammatory signals. The most common triggers vary from person to person. For some, dairy products provoke a reaction. For others, it is gluten, the protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. For still others, it might be eggs, soy, or any number of other common foods. The challenge is that these reactions can be delayed and diffuse. You might eat the food and not notice any immediate effect. But over the following days, you might feel vaguely unwell, have digestive discomfort, notice joint stiffness, or experience fatigue. The connection between the food and the symptoms is not obvious, so the pattern continues. This is different from the immediate, severe reactions that some people experience. Those are clear and unmistakable. The more common pattern is subtle and cumulative. The body is constantly dealing with a low-grade immune response, constantly inflamed at a level that does not demand attention but does demand resources. For those who suspect this might be an issue, the most reliable approach is a systematic process of elimination and reintroduction. Removing common trigger foods for a period of time, then adding them back one at a time while paying close attention to how the body responds. This is not about following a trendy diet or avoiding foods for philosophical reasons. It is about gathering information about how your own body responds to what you eat. The evidence from populations that age well suggests that dietary patterns matter more than individual foods. Traditional diets around the world vary widely in what they include, but they share certain characteristics. They are built around whole foods rather than manufactured products. They include a variety of plants. They do not rely heavily on refined grains and sugars. They provide adequate protein and fat from natural sources. Within this framework, individuals can find what works for them. The goal is not to find the one perfect diet that works for everyone, but to find the pattern of eating that allows your own body to function without constant internal stress. The deep importance of the digestive tract. The digestive tract deserves special attention because it is the interface between the outside world and the internal environment. Everything you eat passes through this system. What happens in the digestive tract affects everything else. The lining of the digestive tract is only 1 cell thick in many places. This thin barrier must allow nutrients to pass through while keeping out larger particles that do not belong. It is an active, selective system, not a passive filter. Supporting this barrier means providing it with the right raw materials. Certain nutrients are particularly important for the cells that line the digestive tract. Zinc, for example, is essential for their growth and repair. The amino acid glutamine serves as a primary fuel source for these cells. The short-chain fatty acids produced when beneficial bacteria ferment fiber help maintain the integrity of the barrier. It also means avoiding things that damage this lining. Highly processed foods, excessive alcohol, and certain medications can all irritate the digestive tract. So can foods that trigger immune reactions in sensitive individuals. The community of microorganisms that lives in the digestive tract plays a crucial role in this system. These bacteria, collectively called the microbiome, help digest food, produce certain vitamins, train the immune system, and maintain the health of the intestinal lining. They are not passive passengers, but active participants in digestion and immunity. This community thrives on diversity. Different bacteria prefer different types of fiber and resistant starch. Eating a variety of plant foods provides the raw materials that support a diverse microbial community. When the diet is narrow and repetitive, the microbial community becomes less diverse, and its ability to support health diminishes. Antibiotics, while sometimes necessary, can disrupt this community. They do not distinguish between harmful bacteria and beneficial ones. After a course of antibiotics, the microbial community is diminished. Rebuilding it takes time and depends on diet. Fermented foods have been part of traditional diets around the world for thousands of years. Sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, kefir, miso, and other fermented foods contain beneficial bacteria that can support the digestive system. They also contain compounds produced during fermentation that may have their own beneficial effects. For those dealing with digestive discomfort, certain foods have a long history of traditional use. Cabbage, whether raw or fermented, contains compounds that support the health of the digestive lining. The same is true for certain herbs and preparations that have been used in various traditional medicine systems. The digestive system is not separate from the rest of the body. When it functions well, it supports everything else. When it is inflamed or compromised, it sends signals that affect the whole system. The body's relationship with fat. Body fat is often discussed in purely aesthetic terms, but its role in health is far more complex. Fat tissue is metabolically active. It produces hormones and signaling molecules that affect appetite, inflammation, and how cells respond to insulin. The location of fat matters as much as the amount. Fat stored around the abdomen, surrounding the internal organs, is more metabolically active than fat stored under the skin elsewhere on the body. This visceral fat releases more inflammatory compounds and has a greater impact on insulin sensitivity. This helps explain why waist circumference is such a useful health marker. It is not about appearance. It is about the type of fat that tends to accumulate in that area and the metabolic effects that come with it. The relationship between fat and inflammation runs in both directions. Fat cells produce inflammatory signals, and inflammation makes it harder for the body to manage blood sugar and insulin. This creates a cycle that can be difficult to break. But fat is not simply bad. Some fat is necessary for health. It provides energy storage, insulation, and produces beneficial hormones. The question is not whether to have fat, but whether the amount and distribution of fat supports health or works against it. For those carrying excess weight, particularly around the middle, reducing that burden can have effects throughout the body. It is not about achieving some ideal weight, but about reducing the inflammatory load that excess fat creates. Even modest reductions can make a meaningful difference. The approach that works best is not dramatic restriction or extreme dieting, but a gradual shift toward foods that support metabolic health. Foods that do not spike blood sugar and insulin. Foods that provide satisfaction and nutrition without driving constant hunger. Foods that can be eaten consistently over time, not just for a few weeks. This is not about willpower or discipline. It is about giving the body the conditions it needs to regulate its own systems. When those conditions are met, weight tends to settle at whatever level is appropriate for that individual. The question of iron. Among the many minerals the body requires, iron occupies a unique position. It is essential for carrying oxygen in the blood and for numerous enzymatic reactions. But unlike many other nutrients, the body has no efficient way to eliminate excess iron. This means that iron accumulates over time. What little is lost through normal shedding of skin cells and minor bleeding is all the body can get rid of. The rest is conserved and recycled. For most of human history, this was not a problem. Diets were not particularly high in iron, and women lost iron regularly through menstruation. But in the modern context, with iron-fortified foods and supplements, some people accumulate more iron than they need. Excess iron tends to deposit in tissues, particularly the liver, where it can promote inflammation and damage over time. This is not a concern for everyone, but it is worth understanding for those who might be at risk. The body has an interesting relationship with iron during infections. Both beneficial bacteria and disease-causing organisms need iron to grow. During an infection, the body naturally withholds iron, making it less available to potential pathogens. This is one reason why anemia can develop during or after serious illness. The body is temporarily sequestering iron as a defense mechanism. For most people, the concern is not deficiency, but excess. This is particularly relevant for those who eat a lot of red meat, take multivitamins containing iron, or cook regularly in cast iron cookware. It is also relevant for those who eat fortified grain products, which add iron to foods that would not naturally contain it. This is not to say that everyone should avoid iron. Some people genuinely need more. But it is worth being aware of iron as a factor that can contribute to inflammation when present in excess. The balance of fats. The types of fats we eat influence inflammation throughout the body. This is not about fat being good or bad, but about the specific effects of different fatty acids. Omega-6 fatty acids, found abundantly in vegetable oils like soybean oil, corn oil, and cottonseed oil, tend to promote inflammatory processes. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fish and certain plant sources, tend to support anti-inflammatory processes. Both are necessary, but the balance between them matters. The modern diet is heavily weighted toward omega-6. These oils are used in most restaurant cooking and appear in countless packaged foods. Even foods that seem healthy may be cooked in these oils. The result is an imbalance that pushes the body toward inflammation. Shifting this balance means reducing exposure to omega-6 rich oils and increasing intake of omega-3 rich foods. Fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel are excellent sources. For those who do not eat fish, fish oil supplements can provide the same fats in concentrated form. This is not about eliminating all omega-6. Some is necessary. It is about restoring a balance that more closely resembles what humans ate for most of their evolutionary history, before industrial seed oils became ubiquitous. For those who fast for health reasons, omega-3 intake deserves particular attention. When food is restricted, the body draws on its fat stores. If those stores are low in omega-3, prolonged fasting can temporarily shift the balance in a pro-inflammatory direction. This is not a reason to avoid fasting, but a reason to ensure that when you do eat, you include good sources of omega-3. The pattern of eating. When you eat may be as important as what you eat. The human body evolved in an environment where food was not constantly available. Periods of eating were followed by periods of not eating. This pattern shaped how our metabolism works. Every time you eat, regardless of what you eat, insulin rises. This is normal and necessary. But if you are eating constantly throughout the day, insulin never has a chance to return to its baseline level. It remains elevated. And elevated insulin promotes inflammation and insulin resistance. This is not about any particular food being bad. Even healthy foods, when eaten constantly, keep insulin elevated. The pattern matters independently of the content. Traditional cultures around the world naturally ate in patterns that included periods of not eating. They did not have access to food 24 hours a day. They did not snack continuously from morning until night. They ate meals, and between meals, they did not eat. Modern life has eroded this pattern. Food is everywhere. Snacking is normalized. Many people eat from the moment they wake until the moment they sleep. This constant eating keeps the digestive system constantly active and keeps insulin constantly elevated. Restoring some separation between eating periods does not require extreme measures. It might mean finishing dinner earlier and not eating again until breakfast. It might mean having 3 meals without snacks in between. It might mean occasionally having a longer period without food, allowing the body to fully process what has been eaten and return to a baseline state. The body knows how to do this. It has systems that activate during periods without food, systems that support repair and maintenance. Giving those systems time to work is part of supporting health over the long term. Movement through the years. The human body is designed to move. Every system in the body functions better with regular physical activity. The cardiovascular system, the metabolic system, the nervous system, the musculoskeletal system, all of them depend on movement to maintain their function. This is not about exercise in the modern sense of going to a gym and working out. It is about movement as a regular part of life. Walking, carrying, reaching, bending, standing. The kinds of movement that were once unavoidable are now optional, and many people choose to opt out. The evidence from populations that age well is consistent. They do not necessarily engage in structured exercise programs. They live in environments that require movement. They walk to get places. They work with their hands. They remain active in daily life. For those living in environments that do not require movement, creating opportunities for movement becomes important. This might mean walking instead of driving for short trips. It might mean gardening or doing household tasks that require physical effort. It might mean finding activities that are enjoyable enough to sustain over time. The specific type of movement matters less than the consistency. The body responds to regular, varied movement. It adapts to whatever demands are placed on it. If those demands are limited, it adapts by becoming less capable. If those demands are varied and consistent, it maintains its capacity. Strength becomes increasingly important with age. Muscle mass naturally declines over the decades, a process that accelerates if muscles are not regularly challenged. Maintaining muscle requires doing things that require effort. Lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling. Activities that make muscles work against resistance. Balance is another capacity that benefits from regular use. Activities that challenge balance, standing on one foot, walking on uneven ground, moving in different directions, help maintain the complex systems that keep us upright. When balance is not challenged, it deteriorates, increasing the risk of falls. Flexibility and mobility also respond to use. Joints need to move through their full range to maintain that range. Tissues need to be stretched to remain supple. The saying, use it or lose it, applies literally to every aspect of physical capacity. The goal is not to achieve some athletic ideal. It is to maintain the ability to live independently, to do the things you want to do, to move through life with ease rather than limitation. The environment we create, the spaces we inhabit shape our health in ways that are easy to overlook. The light we are exposed to, the air we breathe, the chemicals we encounter, all of these influence how the body functions. Light is particularly important for regulating daily rhythms. Bright light in the morning helps set the internal clock, signaling that it is time to be active. Darkness at night allows the production of melatonin, supporting sleep. The widespread use of artificial light, particularly the blue light from screens in the evening, can disrupt these rhythms. The body evolved with predictable patterns of light and dark. Modern life has blurred these patterns, and the body responds to this confusion. Sleep suffers, hormone rhythms are disrupted, and recovery is impaired. Creating an environment that supports natural rhythms might mean getting outside in the morning, even briefly. It might mean dimming lights in the evening and avoiding screens before bed. It might mean making the bedroom truly dark for sleep. Air quality matters as well. The lungs are constantly exposed to whatever is in the air. Indoor air can contain pollutants from cleaning products, furnishings, cooking, and outdoor air that seeps in. While complete control is impossible, simple steps like ventilating regularly and choosing products with fewer volatile compounds can reduce the burden. The thousands of synthetic chemicals in modern life are difficult to avoid entirely, but awareness of major sources allows for reasonable choices. Plastics, particularly when heated, can release compounds that affect the body. Personal care products can contain ingredients that are absorbed through the skin. Pesticides on food can add to the body's chemical load. This is not about fear or perfection. It is about understanding that the body must process everything it encounters. Reducing unnecessary exposures gives the body less work to do. The role of the mind. The connection between mental state and physical health is not mystical. It is physiological. The brain communicates constantly with the rest of the body through nerves, hormones, and immune signals. What happens in the mind affects what happens in the body. Chronic worry, persistent negative thoughts, and unrelenting stress keep the body in a state of alert. The stress response remains activated. Hormones that should surge briefly and then subside remain elevated. This affects digestion, immunity, inflammation, and recovery. The evidence from long-term studies is clear. People who maintain social connections, who have a sense of purpose, who engage with life, tend to live longer and healthier lives. This is not about positive thinking as a cure for disease. It is about the physiological effects of chronic stress versus chronic ease. Social connection matters because humans evolved in groups. Isolation is stressful for a social species. Loneliness triggers stress responses that affect health over time. Maintaining relationships, finding community, staying connected to others. These are not just pleasant extras, but fundamental supports for health. Purpose matters because it organizes behavior. When you have reasons to get up in the morning, reasons to take care of yourself, reasons to stay engaged, you are more likely to do the things that support health. Purpose does not need to be grand. It can be as simple as caring for a garden, helping with grandchildren, or pursuing an interest that brings meaning. Engagement matters because the brain needs stimulation. Learning new things, facing challenges, adapting to new situations. These activities maintain cognitive capacity. The brain remains plastic throughout life, capable of forming new connections, but it needs to be used to maintain this capacity. The practices that support mental health are not complicated. They involve staying connected to others. They involve finding activities that absorb attention and provide satisfaction. They involve allowing time for rest and recovery. They involve treating the mind as part of the body, not separate from it. The wisdom of traditional diets. Looking at how people ate before the industrial food system provides useful perspective. Traditional diets around the world varied enormously based on what was available locally. But they shared certain characteristics that are worth noting. They were built around whole foods. Grains were consumed whole, not refined. Vegetables and fruits were eaten fresh or preserved through fermentation, drying, or other traditional methods. Meat, when available, was eaten in its entirety, including organ meats that provided nutrients not found in muscle meat alone. They included fermented foods. Almost every traditional culture has some form of fermentation: vegetables, dairy, grains, or fish transformed by beneficial bacteria. These foods provided probiotics before anyone knew what probiotics were. They respected natural rhythms. Eating followed the seasons. Preservation allowed food to be stored for times when fresh food was scarce. Feasting and fasting were part of the natural cycle, not something imposed by choice. They were low in refined sugar. Sweet foods existed: honey, fruit, occasional treats, but they were not daily staples. The constant sugar exposure that characterizes modern diets was unknown. They were not low in fat. Traditional diets varied in fat content, but many were relatively high in fat from natural sources. The fats came from animals, fish, nuts, seeds, and olives, not from industrial seed oils. They were adequate in protein. Protein needs were met through a combination of animal and plant sources. The specific sources varied by region and culture. This is not to say that traditional diets were perfect or that we should try to replicate them exactly. Modern life is different, and we have knowledge that traditional cultures did not. But the general patterns: whole foods, fermentation, natural rhythms, minimal refined sugar, provide useful guidance. The reality of adaptation. The body is remarkably adaptable. It responds to the conditions it is given. If those conditions include constant food, it adapts by becoming efficient at storing energy. If they include chronic stress, it adapts by keeping stress responses active. If they include inflammation, it adapts by maintaining inflammatory processes. This adaptability is a double-edged sword. It allows the body to survive in challenging conditions, but it also means that when conditions are poor, the body adapts in ways that create problems over time. The good news is that adaptation works in both directions. When conditions improve, the body adapts to the new conditions. It is never too late to make changes. The body retains its capacity to respond throughout life. This is not about reversing all the effects of aging. Some changes are inevitable, but many of the changes that are attributed to aging are actually adaptations to conditions. Change the conditions, and the body adapts differently. A person who has been sedentary for years can begin moving and see improvements in strength, balance, and cardiovascular function. A person who has been eating a highly processed diet can change what they eat and see improvements in energy, digestion, and metabolic markers. A person who has been chronically stressed can find ways to reduce that stress and see improvements in sleep, mood, and physical symptoms. The body is always listening. It is always responding. It is always adapting. The integration of approaches. None of the factors discussed here operates in isolation. Diet affects inflammation, which affects insulin sensitivity, which affects weight, which affects inflammation. Movement affects metabolism, which affects weight, which affects inflammation. Sleep affects stress hormones, which affect appetite, which affects what we eat. Everything is connected. This interconnectedness can feel overwhelming, but it is actually empowering. Because everything is connected, Small changes can have ripple effects. Improving one area often improves others. You do not have to do everything at once. The most effective approach is usually to start with whatever feels most accessible. For some, that might be changing what they eat for breakfast. For others, it might be adding a daily walk. For still others, it might be working on sleep habits. The specific starting point matters less than the direction of change. Over time, small changes accumulate. The body begins to adapt to new conditions. What felt difficult becomes normal. What required effort becomes automatic. The trajectory shifts from gradual decline to gradual improvement. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. No one eats perfectly all the time. No one moves perfectly all the time. No one sleeps perfectly all the time. The goal is not perfection, but pattern. What do you do most of the time? What is your typical day like? What are your usual habits? The body responds to the pattern, not the exception. The question of time. There is a tendency to want quick results. To want to know that what we are doing is working. To want reassurance that our efforts are paying off. Some changes do produce quick results. People often notice improvements in energy, digestion, and sleep within days or weeks of changing their eating patterns. Blood markers can improve within months. Weight can change relatively quickly, but the most important changes happen over longer time scales. The reduction in cumulative inflammation, the maintenance of muscle mass, the preservation of bone density, the continued function of organs and systems. These are measured in years and decades, not days and weeks. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A moderate approach maintained over years accomplishes more than an extreme approach abandoned after weeks. The body responds to what you do regularly, not what you do occasionally. This is also why it is never too late to start. The benefits of better habits begin accumulating from the moment you adopt them. A person who starts moving more at 70 will be stronger at 75 than they would have been if they had remained sedentary. A person who improves their eating at 80 will have better health at 85 than they would have had otherwise. The time is going to pass anyway. The question is what conditions you will give your body during that time. A calm perspective, the search for ways to live well across many years, is as old as humanity. It has generated countless theories, practices, and products. Some have value. Many do not. What emerges from looking at the evidence, from observing populations that age well, from understanding how the body actually works, is not complicated. It is not secret. It is not new. Eat mostly whole foods. Move regularly. Get enough sleep. Stay connected to others. Find meaning in daily life. Reduce unnecessary stresses. Give the body time to recover between challenges. None of this is dramatic. None of it is exciting in the way that a new discovery or a miracle cure might be. But it has the advantage of being true. It has the advantage of working, not quickly or perfectly, but reliably over time. The body is a remarkable system. It has kept you alive through everything you have experienced so far. It continues to maintain and repair itself every moment of every day. It asks only that you give it reasonable conditions to work with. Not perfect conditions. Not ideal conditions. Just reasonable ones. The years ahead will bring changes. That is the nature of life. But how you move through those years, how you experience them, what you are able to do and enjoy, these are not fixed. They are shaped by the choices you make, the habits you maintain, the conditions you create. There is no finish line. There is no point at which you are done and can stop. There is only the ongoing process of living, day by day, year by year, adapting to whatever comes while doing what you can to support the body that carries you through. That is enough. That has always been enough. The single most important idea to carry forward is this: The body is always listening, always adapting, always responding to the conditions you provide. It does not judge. It does not hold grudges. It simply works with whatever it is given. If this exploration has prompted any thoughts about your own path, your own habits, your own understanding of how you feel from day to day, consider sharing them in the comments. The longevity library is, in many ways, a conversation, a gathering of insights from those who have thought deeply about what it means to live well across the years. There are other recordings here, other explorations of the patterns that support healthy aging. If you have not already, you are welcome to browse the library and see what calls to you. This is the longevity library. Listen, learn, and live longer.